anyway, my only criticism, if there's any criticism, it's more about process than solution. And this is the irony. Usually teachers and students want the cleanest, most professional version before they turn it in. I wished you hadn't used such good vertical lines and perfect circles and really lovely textured. I wish you had just done messy as opposed to a third, a third, a third in perfect rectangles. Because once you have those perfect rectangles, we think in terms of perfect spaces.
Sorry, that's the design in me.
I know, and it's unfortunately it's the, as educators, as professionals, we want the best looking version, but ironically, we can do all of that very quickly at the end. But what we can't do once we get past the first day are messier, fluid relationships between spaces, which underpin everything thematically. So I would just invite you to not rush to do a perfect visual representation until you have no choice. And if there's going to be a criticism, that's not even about your solution or ideas. That's just about don't get locked in to the thing that locks you in. Okay? But otherwise, I think everything is sellable. Everything is ripe with exploration. I really like triangulated relationships and kitty corner relationships and sort of intersection relationships. And there's a lot going on. My son is making bubble noises, aren't you? Okay. Hey, if you're going to be happy, you can't do that. Okay. If there's the most exciting elements for me are how do you orient, market, design that upper third to become its own independent professional development hub or center that can be open to the community at large and almost act as an entrance into the media center as if professional development was primary goal. So if I could think of professional development as being on the north axis and public theater and public messiness as being on the bottom, and then the middle is this traditional hub and spoke scenario. And then all of a sudden we have this really electric idea of how do we use that stage / theater in this wonderful orientation of vertical, horizontal, and kind of peripheral vision connections. So tons of potential.
So Christian, I just want to jump in here. I think your reminder about messiness and sort of living within perfection and resisting the urge to get to a perfect vision is really well taken here, because we've been living in this ideal world for half a day. But as you and I have talked about, one of the possibilities of this kind of exercise is that our four people here and anybody else who might go through something like this is going to go back to their school, to their classroom, and be thinking like a designer, and they're going to be thinking and living in a really imperfect world, and it's going to be messy. And so I think that's an important thing to kind of embrace.
Yeah, and one thing I'm always reminded about, in nature, there's no such thing as a square rectangle. There's not a single piece of evidence anywhere in the natural world where a single square or rectangle exists. And we only see them because we know what a square and rectangle is, and we see things that are close as being square-like. But in nature, there's incredibly honest, organic alignment. And I think when we're at this state, in addition to kind of 21st century messiness, and just enough or by any means necessary, this idea of we don't need perfect, we just need things that can move and are useful and adjustable, adaptable. We tend to work in squares and rectangles because as humans we want a very rational solution. And we know that those are all, the real truth is the only reason we have them in buildings is because it's really easy to train a builder, and I mean somebody who swings a hammer, to use 2x4s in vertical and horizontal arrangements. There's no, and it's the cheapest, most efficient way to build are straight lines in vertical and horizontal relationships. But in terms of learning is not ever done that way except when we force it. So what I wouldn't want us to do is to be like, hey, I have this tool, so we have vertical and horizontal lines, let's commit to that. So just give yourself more freedom over time, and you'll still do everything you want to accomplish. And then, frankly, the engineers can come and demand that they want to know where the headers are and where the load-bearing walls are and how the electrical conduits are going to work. But really, we can do anything with space at this level. So free yourself up. Otherwise, I love everything. Everything is going to work.
Thank you.
So really, your message, if I understand it, is somebody should invent an AutoCAD program that prohibits straight lines.
Well, or just not immediately rush to AutoCAD for this exercise.
Yeah.
I think, the truth is, if we didn't give you a ruler and we didn't give you a straight edge and didn't give you software that emulates that, your lines would be approximate square, but they would be a little messier because our hands aren't that. Unless we really practice, it's hard to do it. And what you would do to not look imperfect is you would start to draw in circles, forgive yourself. And so I just say, let's forgive ourselves from the very beginning. And then eventually, we can always straighten out any line that needs to be. But I also like the idea that if what I really like about this drawing is not literalness, but once I know what your relationships are based on your theme, then it's really easy to go, what if we push that wall back a little bit? Or what if we exploded that wall? Or what if we scribbled a little bit over here? So I like it as a platform, but I don't necessarily want anyone to feel like it has to be straight, good. But that's a modest criticism. So I figure if that's the worst we do, then we're great. But I also I like what you're doing. The thinking behind your goals are really honorable. And frankly, I've been with architects that have presented a dressed up version of these kinds of relationships. So I'm not saying anything that I'm like, oh my, that can't sell. I can't think of any high schools or elementary schools that don't have these. I mean, if anything, I've seen this done. And if we were really to work together over time, I would push you to be a little more impractical because I've seen this done very practically. But that doesn't mean it's not innovative. It just means I've seen this rush to an incredibly practical outcome. But that's okay because it has to be practical in terms of usage. So I would do that to be the devil's advocate, I suppose. But otherwise, good stuff. So I actually see three. I see Atrium Public, I see Media Center, Library, and then I see this Professional Development Hub or Center, and I see all three having expanded relationships, and I see lots of transparency, and I see the potential for vertical, and I see the potential for breakout or alcove experiences as well, and that's all good stuff.